The sun shone brightly over Kumasi that Saturday morning, and the whole neighborhood seemed to hum with excitement. Adwoa stood in her white gown, heart racing, watching the man she believed was her forever. Kojo looked dashing in his tailored Kent suit, his smile warm enough to melt away every doubt she had ever known. Friends and family filled the church, their voices rising in songs of joy. Everyone whispered about how perfect they looked together, the beauty from a respected Coco family and the charming young man who had swept her off her feet. When Kojo took her hands, his eyes locked on hers as if no one else existed. "I promise," he said softly so only she could hear, "to love you, protect you, and cherish you every single day of my life." Adwoa felt her chest tighten with happiness. She believed him completely. His words felt like a safe place she could live in forever. The reception was even livelier, drumming, dancing, and the smell of jollof rice filling the air. Kojo never left her side, introducing her to every guest with pride. "My wife," he kept saying, almost tasting the word. Adwoa thought, this is it, the start of our beautiful story. That night, as they sat together, exhausted but glowing from the day's joy, Kojo leaned over and kissed her forehead. "We're going to build a future so bright," he whispered. And in that moment, Adwoa couldn't imagine anything but happiness ahead. One quiet Tuesday morning, Adwoa was sipping her tea on the veranda when the postman arrived with a thick envelope. The return address made her heart skip. It was from her late father's lawyer. Her hands trembled as she opened it, the paper rustling in the cool breeze. She began to read, and with every line, her eyes widened. The words were clear. Her father's cocoa farm, the sprawling estate, and all its earnings were now officially hers. The same land she had run through as a child, chasing chickens and laughing with her father, was now in her name. She put the letter down for a moment and let the memories wash over her. She could see her father walking between the cocoa trees, his hat tilted, explaining how each pod was a treasure if you cared for it well. He had always said, "Adwoa, this land will feed generations if you treat it with love." Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness but of deep pride and longing. Adwoa called her mother immediately. "Mama, it's ours. Everything. Papa left it all to me," she said, her voice shaking. Her mother was quiet for a moment, then simply said, "He trusted you, my child. Make him proud." That night she sat by her desk, sketching plans in her notebook. She wasn't thinking about selling or living lavishly. No, she wanted to expand the business, improve the workers' wages, and modernize the production. She dreamed of turning the family brand into an international name while keeping its heart and roots in Kumasi. As she closed the letter and placed it in a wooden box for safekeeping, she whispered to the night air, "Papa, I'll take care of it. I promise." In her heart, she felt a new fire, the kind that comes when you know you are holding both a gift and a responsibility too precious to waste. At first, Kojo was excited about the inheritance news. He hugged Adwoa tightly, saying how proud he was of her father's trust in her. But within a few weeks, his tone started to shift. Over dinner one evening he casually mentioned, "You know, love, it might be easier if you just put the land and money under my name. That way, I can handle all the business side, and you won't have to stress." Adwoa laughed softly, thinking he was joking, but his face stayed serious. "It's for the family's future," he added, reaching for her hand. Something in his eyes felt different, less about love, more about ownership. The conversations became more frequent. In the mornings, he'd bring it up over breakfast. At night, he'd lean against the doorway and say, "You trust me, don't you? Then sign it over. I'll make sure we're secure forever." When she hesitated, he'd sigh loudly, acting hurt. "I thought we were a team. Or don't you believe in us?" Adwoa began noticing other changes too. The man who once showered her with affection now seemed to measure his kindness. He would be sweet when she agreed with him but cold and distant when she pushed back. One evening, after she refused yet again, he slammed his glass down and muttered, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." She tried to remind him that her father's dream was for her to run the estate herself. But Kojo only smiled in that way that made her skin crawl. "Dreams can change, Adwoa. You just have to be smart enough to see it." It was the first time she truly felt a shadow between them. The warmth that had filled their home now carried an edge, sharp and unspoken. And deep inside, she wondered if the man she had married had always been this way, and she just hadn't seen it until now. Days turned into weeks, and Adwoa's refusals only seemed to harden Kojo. The man who once greeted her with warm hugs now barely looked at her. Meals were eaten in silence. He started coming home late, claiming he was busy with work, but his phone was always glued to his hand, and he stepped outside whenever it rang. One Saturday evening, Adwoa tried to bridge the gap. She cooked his favorite meal, light soup with goat meat, and set the table beautifully. He sat down without a smile, ate in silence, and then pushed his plate away. "We can't keep going like this," he finally said, his voice flat. She felt her chest tighten. "Going like what?" she asked. "This," he said, gesturing between them. "You holding on to that land and money like it's only yours. I'm your husband. If you loved me, you'd trust me with it." Adwoa swallowed hard. "Kojo, it's my father's legacy. He wanted me to run it. I'm not signing it over." His jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he might walk away. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice colder than she'd ever heard. "Then here it is. Either you put it all in my name so we can build our future together, or you watch this marriage fall apart." The words hit her like a slap. She stared at him, searching for the man she married, but all she saw was someone who saw her inheritance as a prize to claim. That night, she lay in bed while Kojo slept soundly beside her, as if nothing had happened. Her mind replayed his ultimatum over and over. She realized it wasn't just about the money or the land. It was about control, and he was ready to break their marriage to get it. A quiet sadness settled over her, but beneath it, something else began to grow, a steely resolve. If he wanted a fight for her father's legacy, she was ready to give him one. Adwoa woke up the next morning with her mind made up. Kojo's ultimatum still echoed in her ears, but instead of breaking her, it had lit a fire inside her. She knew she couldn't confront him head-on, not yet. If she was going to protect her father's legacy, she would have to be careful, quiet, and smart. She called Amma, her childhood friend, the one person she trusted with her deepest secrets. They met at a small cafe tucked away from the busy streets of Kumasi. Over steaming cups of tea, Adwoa poured her heart out, the inheritance, Kojo's pressure, the ultimatum. Amma listened without interrupting, her eyes narrowing as the story unfolded. "You can't give him that land, Adwoa," Amma said firmly. "You need someone who knows the law inside and out." That same week, Amma introduced her to Mr. Mensah, a respected business lawyer known for being sharp and discreet. Sitting in his quiet office, Adwoa explained everything again, leaving nothing out. Mr. Mensah leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his desk. "If you want to keep control, we'll need to make sure your ownership is legally protected in ways he can't touch, even if you're married." Over the next few weeks, Adwoa worked in secret. While Kojo thought she was busy with regular errands, she was actually signing documents, restructuring ownership rights, and setting up plans for something bigger, her own cocoa export company. She kept every paper locked in a box hidden away from their home. At night, lying beside Kojo, she would smile faintly to herself. He thought she was quiet because she was giving in. But in truth, every silence was part of her plan. Every nod, every soft "we'll see," was a way to keep him calm until the time was right. She had been heartbroken by what her marriage had turned into, but she refused to let heartbreak make her weak. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her father's dream, her workers' livelihoods, and her own freedom. And when the moment came, she was going to make sure Kojo never saw it coming. The evening was warm, the air filled with the smell of grilled tilapia and spices. Kojo's family had gathered at his uncle's big house, the long dining table covered with steaming bowls of fufu, soups, and roasted plantains. Everyone was in high spirits, laughing, talking, and clinking glasses. Kojo sat beside Adwoa, his arm casually draped around her chair, looking more confident than she had seen him in weeks. She knew why. He believed tonight was the night she would announce that the land and inheritance were being transferred to him. She had let him believe that, dropping small hints here and there, keeping her true plan hidden like gold. Halfway through the meal, Kojo's uncle tapped his glass. Adwoa, my dear, I hear you have some important news for the family. All eyes turned to her. Kojo gave her a small nod, his smile smug, already tasting his victory. Adwoa stood slowly, her hands resting lightly on the back of her chair. Her heart thudded in her chest, but her voice was steady. Yes, I do have news, she began, scanning the room. As you all know, my father left me the cocoa farm and estate. I have spent the past weeks deciding how best to honor his memory and secure our future. Kojo's smile widened. That's why, she continued, pausing just long enough for suspense, I'm proud to announce the launch of Adwoa Cocoa Exports, my own international cocoa company. I will be the sole owner, and we already have our first shipment scheduled. The room went silent. Kojo's hand slipped off her chair. His face froze, confusion flashing into anger. She smiled gently, as if she hadn't just dropped a bomb. This business will create jobs, expand the farm, and carry my father's name into the world. I'm grateful for everyone's support as I take this step. Kojo's fork clattered against his plate. His mother shifted uncomfortably. Kojo's uncle raised his eyebrows but said nothing. Adwoa sat down calmly, her heart racing but her face serene. Kojo leaned toward her, his voice low and tight. What did you just do? Adwoa picked up her fork, meeting his glare with a calm smile. I secured the future. Just not the one you imagined. The car ride home from the family dinner was icy cold. Kojo didn't even start the engine at first. He just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, his jaw tight. Then, without looking at her, he said, You humiliated me in front of my family. Adwoa kept her eyes on the passing streetlights outside. I told the truth, she replied quietly. He let out a bitter laugh. The truth. You went behind my back. You betrayed me, Adwoa. After everything I've done for you. The days that followed were a storm. Kojo moved through the house like a stranger, slamming doors, making sharp comments, and telling anyone who would listen that she had disrespected him as a man. Word spread quickly, and whispers reached her from neighbors, friends, even some relatives. But something else happened too. The media caught wind of her announcement. A popular business blog published an article titled, Kumasi Woman Launches Cocoa Export Empire. Alone. They praised her courage, especially in a society where women were often expected to let men take the lead. Soon radio stations were calling her for interviews. TV anchors smiled as they introduced her as the fearless young businesswoman who is rewriting the rules. Social media exploded with her story. Some people called her an inspiration. Others sent messages thanking her for showing that women could protect what was theirs. Hashtags with her name and hashtag Own Your Dream began trending. Kojo hated it. The more her face appeared in the news, the angrier he became. They don't know the full story, he hissed one night. They think you're some hero. But you destroyed this marriage. Adwoa looked at him, calm but unshaken. No, Kojo. You destroyed it the moment you tried to take what wasn't yours. That night, she lay in bed scrolling through the hundreds of supportive comments from strangers. The more she read, the more she realized this wasn't just her fight anymore. It was for every woman who had ever been told to hand over her power. And she had no intention of going back. A week after the dinner, Adwoa received an unexpected phone call. It was Kojo's uncle, the same one who had hosted that tense family gathering. His deep, steady voice came through the line. My daughter, I need to speak with you. Can you come by my office tomorrow morning? For a moment she hesitated. She didn't know if this was going to be another lecture or another attempt to convince her to fix things with Kojo. But something in his tone felt different, almost warm. The next morning she arrived at his office, a spacious room lined with books and the faint smell of cocoa beans. He rose from behind his desk and greeted her with a firm handshake and a small smile. Sit, he said, motioning to the chair across from him. I want you to know, he began slowly, that what you did at that dinner, protecting your inheritance and starting your own business, was the right thing. Adwoa blinked in surprise. You think so? He nodded. Kojo is my nephew and I love him, but he is wrong in this. A man who truly loves his wife would build with her, not try to take from her. Your father's legacy is yours to protect, and you've shown strength many people wouldn't have had. Relief washed over her, but he wasn't finished. Leaning forward, he said, I've been in the cocoa industry for over 30 years. I have contacts in Europe and Asia who are always looking for high-quality suppliers. I can introduce you to the right buyers, the ones who can take your company to the international stage. Adwoa felt her throat tighten. Why would you help me after everything? He smiled faintly. Because you are family too, and because I believe in rewarding courage. Kojo may not see it now, but one day he will understand what he lost. They spent the next hour discussing strategies, market demands, and potential export routes. By the time she left, she was holding a small folder, a golden key to opportunities she had only dreamed about. Walking out into the bright Kumasi sun, Adwoa felt a new wave of determination. Not only was she fighting for her legacy, she now had powerful allies standing beside her. 1 year later, Adwoa stood on the balcony of her new office building, watching trucks loaded with cocoa beans roll out toward the port. The golden letters on the wall behind her read Adwoa Cocoa Exports, and they glimmered in the afternoon sun. What had started as a dream in her notebook was now a thriving business, with warehouses full of product and workers whose wages had doubled under her leadership. Her partnership with Kojo's uncle's contacts had paid off. Within months, she had secured deals with major chocolate companies in Europe and Asia. Her cocoa was praised for its quality and ethical sourcing, and her brand became known as one that cared about both people and product. International magazines featured her story, calling her the Cocoa Queen of Kumasi. Then one Friday evening she heard a knock at her door. When she opened it, there stood Kojo. He looked different, thinner, tired, his usual confidence replaced by something almost pleading. Adwoa, he began, his voice low. I was wrong. See it now. I shouldn't have tried to take from you. I want to make things right. I want us back. For a long moment she just looked at him. A year ago, those words might have made her cry with relief. But now they felt hollow. Kojo, she said softly, I didn't build all this just to go back to the person who tried to take it away. His face fell. So that's it. That's it, she replied, her voice steady. I wish you well, but you're not part of my future. She closed the door gently, her heart calm. Turning back toward her desk, she caught sight of a framed photo of her father standing in the cocoa fields, smiling. She smiled back at it. The business was flourishing, the workers were thriving, and she had stayed true to her promise. Adwoa had learned something powerful. Success was not just about building wealth, but about protecting your dignity along the way. And she was never going to let anyone take either from her again. The auditorium was packed, the air buzzing with excitement. Women from across Ghana had gathered for the annual National Women's Entrepreneurship Summit, dressed in vibrant colors that lit up the room. Adwoa stood backstage, clutching her speech, her heart thudding, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was about to say. When her name was called, the applause was warm and welcoming. She stepped onto the stage, the bright lights washing over her. She took a deep breath and looked out at the sea of faces, women who were dreamers, fighters, and builders. They'll try to take what's yours, she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. They'll tell you it's for your own good. They'll say it's for the family, for the future. But what they really want is control. She paused, letting the words sink in. And they will keep trying, until you show them you are not theirs to control. The room went silent, every pair of eyes locked on her. She told them about her father's legacy, the inheritance, the pressure, and the betrayal. She spoke of the fear she felt, and the courage it took to fight back. This isn't just my story, she said, her voice rising. It's the story of every woman who has been told she's not enough to lead, to own, to decide for herself. But I'm here to tell you, you are enough, and you must protect what is yours. When she stepped back from the microphone, the audience erupted in applause, some women standing, clapping, even wiping away tears. In that moment, Adwoa knew her journey had become something bigger, a spark that could light the fire in others.